Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week I'm joined by the wonderful Kelly Twigg, and we are going to be discussing sea glass jewellery, in particular looking at Kelly's top 5 tips for making sea glass jewellery. So if you've wanted to have a go at this and haven't tried before, this is going to be a really helpful episode to kind of point out some of the pitfalls you might fall into, but also some tips to help you get out of them. And the reason why we're sharing this now is because very excitingly, we have a brand new course filmed with Kelly on how to make sea glass jewelry. And it's such a brilliant course. I would say it's fairly intermediate in level. So if you're brand new to jewelry making, I would recommend doing the silver jewelry for absolute beginners first, just so that you know how to do some soldering and some of the basics. But it is a brilliant course. It's very in-depth. Anyone who doesn't know Kelly, if you follow her on Instagram, she is constantly sharing her knowledge and advice and her tips. And the course is no different. It's packed full of tips, not just to help you with sea glass, but to help you with any kind of setting and silver jewelry making. So there's definitely something for all of us to learn in there. So Kelly, thank you so much for coming and joining us and sharing a bit about your course today.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, I enjoyed filming that, the first one I filmed. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. We managed to get a lot done in one day. As you say, there's a lot in the course, a lot of tips. I've given everything I could think of, plus extras to help people. All the things that I've learnt along the way that I think could be useful.
Absolutely. And we're going to go into some of those topics in just a moment. And also just to share that it is on offer at the moment, Kelly's course, it is 50% off. So it is the best time to buy. It's available immediately. You can go after the podcast, go enroll and have a go and order your bits and start making the sea glass projects. It is out now and on 50% off offer until Wednesday, the 19th of March, which is going to come around crazily quick, I feel like. So if you're thinking about it, go for it. And also just to mention before we get into it all, Kelly is also teaching this class in person, yay, at Jewellers Academy Brighton, which is now officially open, which is incredibly exciting. I know lots of you guys have trips planned to come and visit us. I know some of you are coming from very far away for holidays to come visit us, and some of you are closer by. Everybody is very welcome there. And finally, this course is also part of the diploma in silver jewelry for next year. So if you are considering signing up to that course, or perhaps you've already joined, then this is something we're going to be working through together and getting kind of support from Kelly around that too. So lots and lots of support around the sea class jewelry. But Kelly, let's go back to our tips, and maybe we could start off by just sharing, when you're looking at making sea glass jewelry and buying or finding the actual glass for your jewelry, what is your tip for finding the right type of sea glass for what you're trying to make?
I think the type of sea glass that you find, if you have access to a beach and you go and find it yourself, the kind of glass you're looking for, the most important thing is something that's nicely frosted, because the whole point of sea glass is it's glass that has got this lovely translucent sort of glow to it. The abrasion from the sand, the shingle, whatever type of beach you've got, basically rubs that glass. So instead of being clear or see-through, it's completely opaque. And obviously, the longer the glass is spent in the sea and the rougher the tides and the more sort of movement it's had in the waves will be, the more frosty that it is. And that's what is almost most important, because even if it's got a few chips or scratches or things around the edge, you can sort of remove those. But at the end of the day, if it's going to be classed as sea glass, it's that opaque, frosty look that people recognize, I think. So that's the most important thing to look for. I think the beach where I live is very, very pebbly, which can make it quite hard to spot because you've got to have quite good eyesight. If you've got children, take those because their eyes are closer to the ground and they tend to spot the best bits. At least mine do. And the pieces that I find locally here tend to be sort of angular, triangular sort of shapes, lots of triangles and fairly flat, which makes it very good for drilling in particular because it's quite thin. Some of the best beaches I know that I've not actually had a chance to go to are on the northeast coast of the UK. Scotland has some very good beaches. You can sort of research online if you want to go travelling and you want to go on a holiday to maybe go sea glass hunting. I know Seaham in the northeast as the mecca of sea glass. The reason being is there used to be lots of glass factories based there in days gone by, and when they finished making their glass at the end of the day, all the waste products and the slag used to just go over the cliff into the sea. So decades later, centuries even later, that then gets bashed up and washes up on the tide, and that's your sea glass. So that's the best place to go for the colours, the round pebbly bits, and things like that. But you can also, if you don't have a chance to get to the beach, you can find it. I've got quite a few beachcombing friends who very generously sell or give some of their sea glass to me if I need it sometimes. And there are quite a lot of people now that sell it on crafting supply sites like Etsy. If you search for sea glass, people that collect it and then sell it as a jewellery making supply for jewellery or for making crafts and cards and things like that. The only thing to look out for is if you do buy sea glass, there is quite a lot of people who will manufacture it too. So you can get what they call cultured sea glass. I don't like to use the term fake because it's kind of, it looks the same and it feels the same, with the exception it's probably not been anywhere near the sea. So it's not technically sea glass. It's got the same sort of look, but you have to be careful if you're doing that. So if you see listings that are quite a low price and there's lots of glass of very similar colours, and especially rare colours like red or blue or pink, and you're thinking, oh, look at all that, that's chances are someone's broken a bottle, tumbled it for a few days and got similar sort of results, which is fine. It still makes for beautiful jewelry, and it's a great thing to practice with. And I think they're using, I suggested using some of that for anyone that buys the material packs for the diploma, simply because you've got that lovely consistency in that it's easier to learn with because the pieces are more of a universal size. Whereas if you get the real stuff, it can be so varied. That's part of the fun, is sort of picking the pieces out. But if you're learning or you're on a course, then you want to have something that's a little more sort of even, I think is
but and consistent, like you said,
exactly,
you produce the results. And I guess if you're making collections as well and you want to have consistency, then there might be considerations there. But I think for some people, part of the joy of making sea glass is going and exploring on the beach and finding things and then creating something out of it.
It's quite nice. And people do that, and they have sea glass of their own they've saved, and it's got special memories. And quite often, I don't have the time to do commissions now. I did for a while, but you will get people that can contact you and say, I've got this special piece of glass, can you make it into something, because they want it to wear or they don't want to lose it. But yeah, like you say, finding the sea glass itself, for a long time when I first started collecting it, before I started making jewelry, it was my mindfulness activity.
Yeah.
Just go for a walk. And just when you're looking for sea glass with your headphones on, you can just, listen to the sea and just zone out. And I find that incredibly relaxing. And I still do. There's not nearly as much on my local beach as there was when I started 6 years ago. But every now and again, when I do find a piece, it's pretty special. It is still out there.
It's still there. You can find it.
Waiting for me.
Awesome. So the most important thing is that it has the kind of brushed texture that it gets from the waves. And then I guess also looking at scale and how usable the piece is. And we've got some great things in the course about ways that you can set sea glass if it's irregular, if it's got very different shapes. So we cover a bezel setting, which is quite good for fairly standardized shaped pieces. And then a claw setting, which is brilliant because you can set anything pretty much in a kind of prong claw setting. And you teach some drilling as well, which is great for, like you said, those triangular pieces if you just want to attach a pendant kind of end. So that was the first tip, picking the sea glass. The second one we were speaking about was around bezel setting, and we talked about this idea that the regular bezel wire, so the 3mm, the 5mm, which we often, if you guys have ever set bezels before, you might have used a 3mm or a 5mm, 0.3mm thick bezel wire. It's a very fine, soft wire, so it's easy to set over these types of stones. But it's tricky, isn't it, Kelly, when the sea glass is thicker than that? What options do we have?
It can be tricky for two reasons. Firstly, it can be higher than 5mm quite often. You can get some nice sort of coin shaped pieces. The kind of pieces for setting in bezels are the sort of fairly flat, but you can also get the pieces that are sort of flat and domed, and you can still set those, but obviously they're a little bit higher than the classic 5mm. So when you've got a lovely cabochon stone and it's calibrated all the way around the outside, it'll be the same height. But with sea glass, obviously, it's going to probably be quite irregular. So one side might be slightly lower, one side could be more domed, one side could be steeper, shallower, and you've got to contour your bezel wire to fit the glass if you want to get that lovely even look as you look down when it's finished. So you might almost end up with sort of a wavy bezel setting, which I cover in the course. And sometimes 5 mil just isn't enough. So what I do is I order fine silver sheet in 0.3 millimeters thickness, so the same thickness as the bezel wire that you can buy, but I tend to order it in 0.7 of a millimeter, or 7 millimeters and 10 millimeters, so just over half a centimeter and then 1 centimeter. So it's kind of follows those stages 3, 5, 7, and 10. And I tend to find that that's enough then, because if you're going to shape and lower the bezel wire anyway, then sometimes 7 or 10 can be a good way of starting. It is slightly harder to manipulate because the bezel wire is so beautifully soft, but it's also cheaper to buy it that way. It's less expensive, which is nice. But what you tend to find is when you're soldering the initial bezel round, it will get annealed at the same time anyway, so it will soften quite quickly once you do the join. Or you could very gently anneal it. It doesn't take a lot, obviously, before you start shaping it, if you've got a rough idea of what size. Or the easiest way to do that, in which case, is to get a piece of paper, maybe work out with a piece of paper or card what size bezel wire you need, and then cut the fine silver, join it, and then you can shape it round the stone.
So there's a bit more thought involved, isn't there? But I think that's explained really beautifully. And this idea that we can buy silver sheet and it can be thin, it can be super thin, just like the bezel wire, but just that that extra bit of thickness. If you found a beautiful piece that you want to set, but 5 mil is not going to cut it. So few nice options there. And in the program, you obviously walk us through step by step how to do a bezel setting and working with those irregularities that you spoke about. And I think that's super helpful. So let's move on to tip number 3, which was around setting stones that are, or sea glass that is very irregular. So if we find a piece and there's no way it's going to sit in any sort of cabochon setting, what options do we have?
You've got a few options. If you really, really want it to be a cabochon, or your client or whoever it is wants it to be cut, and you've got the option of cutting or shaping it, you can do that. It takes some time, but to do that, the same as when you're drilling sea glass, you need diamond coated tools. And you need to do it underwater when it's wet, both because that helps lubricate the tools themselves because it gets quite hot, and also you don't want to be breathing in glass dust. So you could cut some shapes out of sea glass if it's got one chipped corner, or one, sometimes you can get a triangular piece, or if it's got a little bump or something on the bottom that's just stopping it from lying flat, then you can sand that off. I've had some bezels or some sort of round pebbles that I've set as bezels, and to get the bases flat, you can get what are called card sharpeners. So they're like knife sharpeners. You can get some that are credit card size. You can get some bigger ones. And I think 300 or 600 grit is perfect. If you wet your piece of glass and just do a figure of 8 motion on there, that can just take off enough of the base of a piece of sea glass to stop it rocking in the setting and help it lie flat, or take off any sort of lumps or bumps on the underside. And again, you can use silicon carbide bits to sort of trim the edges if you need to. But if it's nice and thin, or it's not too thick, you could drill it. And you could then put a bail through it or something like that. Or if it's really awkward shaped, or, kind of, because sea glass can be any kind of shape. So you can get bits of bottles that are broken, depending on which part of the bottle it is. You can make a claw setting, which is great because you've then got control over where those claws go, how long they are, how many you need. And you can, like a little spider setting, and you can put the sea glass in that and almost literally claw grab it and turn that into a pendant setting, which is quite a nice way of hanging it.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved seeing the claw setting that you did in the program, because I think it's very achievable for people. If you've never done a claw setting before, it's not like a fine jewelry claw setting, although that's also achievable. Everything is possible, but it's really nice. It's a lovely way, and I almost think of it as like a prong setting, although I call it a claw, because it's like you've just got these, like you said, the spider, it just kind of grabs.
It does. They do little spiders when you make them. This is the beauty of glass, I think, because you have to be neat with it and precise, but there's an organic style and vibe and feel to it. And that it's almost like, I would say, like, there's no rules. There are rules because you have to do it a certain way. But like you say, there's not the rigidity of making sure your claws are evenly spaced, because the sea glass will not be 100% perfect. So it's, yeah, and it's quite a nice challenge in that way as well, in that you
Yeah.
think about it. And it's a bit of an engineering comes in, trying to work out the best way to set it and then how you're going to set it.
Yeah, because you're working with nature, aren't you? Something that's been shaped by nature, and it's nice to combine the two. And yeah, I think the claw setting is great for developing your soldering skills as well, and kind of working out how you can create something a little bit more intricate with the sea glass, a little bit different to the bezel setting. Although I love a good bezel setting as well. So they're some really really nice projects. And the fifth and final tip we were going to share about is around drilling. So if we have found this beautiful piece of sea glass and we decided we're not going to do a claw, we're not going to do a bezel, we want to drill, maybe make a pair of earrings or something into the sea glass. Can we just get a drill and just go for it? How does it work?
No, it's one of those things that drilling sea glass, it can take some time, and it can be quite an intimidating thing. And I think a lot of people get quite nervous about doing it, about breaking the glass. I mean, always get some. I mean, this is where the scrappy bits come in really handy. That they're great for practicing on. But again, as I said, you need what's called diamond coated drill bits. You can get them in various different sizes. There's lots of tool suppliers will sell rather expensive ones, but I've just found, because you never know. You don't know the history of the glass that you're drilling. You don't know whether it's going to drill in 10 seconds or 10 minutes, because you just don't know how hard it is. And some glass is harder than others. If you're trying to sort of spend a lot of money on expensive drill bits, it can be a bit of a false economy. So I just bulk buy some fairly cheap ones on Amazon. And sometimes you'll use one drill bit and you'll get 30 drillings out of it. And then other times you'll just get one or two and it'll just go dull or it'll break or whatever. But that seems to be the better way. I always start with a small pilot hole first, exactly the same as if you're drilling silver. You don't want to go straight in with a 3mm drill bit, because if you do that, you're going to probably put the hole where you don't want it, or you're going to break your drill, or your drill bit at least. So start with a tiny hole, and I use a 1mm is the perfect size for this, and to do it underwater, because the water, again, as I said, it cools the drill bit, cools the glass, and it stops any dust from being inhaled and from going into the air, because you don't want to be breathing in glass dust. That can be quite dangerous. So I have a large plastic sort of Tupperware tub that I fill with cold water and an old scrap piece of wood, or sometimes I use a cork sanding block, which floats, so you have to hold it down. But a piece of blue tack, and stick the sea glass on there to stop it rocking. Piece of blue tack is all you need just to hold it still, and then come at it with an angle with the drill, and then very gently go upwards, drill slowly. And this is all included in the course that you can see, because it's kind of a hard thing to explain without.
Yes, it's quite intricate, isn't it? It's almost harder than the two settings, like, in a way. I mean, it's different.
It's a
but
kind of hold your breath thing, because but the nice thing is when you're drilling it, you can see as the drill bit goes through, you can, even if you can't feel it, you can see the water goes kind of murky as the glass starts to sort of, you see the swirls in the water. And I use a cordless Dremel for drilling sea glass, just because I'm scared of mixing water near electricity. That was drummed in. Some people use electric ones, and they have bench presses, and I'll put it in a bench press. I just like to use the Dremel because I just can feel it a bit better, just feel a bit more in control. But it's one of those things that it's really terrifying the first couple of times you do it, and then after a while you think, oh, it's fine.
It's fine.
But my top tip would be, if you do drill sea glass, do the pilot hole first, and then obviously you can go up in grades depending on if you're trying to get jump rings or whatever you need to get through the hole, make them bigger. It's a lot easier afterwards. But also, if you do drill it, just leave it to one side for 24 to 48 hours, because what you can find sometimes is you drill it and it looks perfect, but then it can get like a stress fracture, and then suddenly 2 days later you'll go back to it and it's broken. So if you're making it to sell or to give to someone, always just leave it for a while and drill some spares, and just after a couple of days, if it's not cracked, it's going to be fine. But you just never know if it's going to do that afterwards. So it's something to look out for.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think you shared so much already, so many tips, so many things. And hopefully, you guys listening feeling inspired that you either have made some sea glass jewelry before and maybe learning a bit more about it, or thinking, oh, that might be a fun thing to have a go. It's hugely popular, isn't it? I love it. I think it's.
Yes.
I think people just love this idea of having something that's literally been caressed by the sea on their being. Like there's something very grounding about that. And also that you've been foraging, and it's more than just, kind
It's
of just
making something out of rubbish, isn't it? It's like
Mhm.
reducing, reusing, and recycling. And I think also as well, the colours of sea glass, it just looks really good set in silver. It just naturally goes nicely with it. And
Yeah.
again, of course, it's the textures because you've got the shine of the high shiny silver, and then that opaque, lovely frostiness is a lovely contrast.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Oh, you just remind me, I did miss number 4.
oh,
It's tip number 4, which is about it being see-through. Just finally tell us a little bit about that, because this is a different consideration versus perhaps an opaque
yeah.
cabochon, for
This
example.
is something else with sea glass. Sometimes it's not so much of an issue if you've got the really deep dark colours. But the nice thing about sea glass, because it's got that opaque and it's the way the light goes through it, is part of what its beauty. And then it can change colour in the light as you move it around, which is lovely. And also depending on what you're wearing with it, sometimes it can take on different sort of hues. But the biggest thing about it is quite opaque. So if you are making a bezel setting for it, chances are you're going to be able to see through. Similar to if you're using a moonstone or some lighter shade cabochons with sea glass. So the first thing to remember is your setting has to be neat and tidy, because some of my very first sea glass pieces, I didn't clear up the solder properly. And when you've set the sea glass, you can see like
You can bits of solder.
solder, and then I didn't remove it properly, and you can see it, and it think, oh no, So I've learnt that one, so you don't have to. And I will show you in the course how to get rid of how to get rid of excess solder so you can't see it. And then also after you've tidied up your bezel setting, you have to think about oxidization, in particular with silver. Silver will oxidize over time. Then there's various different things you can do to stop that happening. You can either patina the whole thing from the word go, so it's already oxidized, therefore you're reducing the problem, or you can coat it with certain things inside the setting. There's things you can use that will basically form a seal and help reduce the tarnishing of the silver. And sometimes people will cut designs out in the back plate. And if you do that, that's something else to think about. Do you protect the silver on the inside? Because once the oxygen or the air gets in, and God forbid any water gets in, it will start to discolor, and then you will start to see those dark spots sort of forming underneath. So it's something else you need to think about when you're designing your setting, is think about future proofing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So helpful, and so helpful if you're planning to sell things as well, because these are the things that you wouldn't necessarily find out until
It's true.
further down the line.
I've learned lots of these things the hard way, and this is part of my sort of discovery process as well, which is why I'm happy to share. Is I've been making it for so long, I've encountered all of these things, and I found solutions for them. There are solutions for them, and also as well is a thing to, if you do go on to sell it, or even if you're giving it away to people, is just the standard jewelry care things still apply, especially to sea glass. Don't wear it in water, don't wash up with it, and things like that, because once moisture gets underneath, then it's going to be
It's tricky.
incredibly difficult to get it.
Take care of the glass jewelry.
Don't try and solder anything with sea glass in place, because one thing it doesn't like is heat. It's funny because the glass, I've trialed this as well, testing things out. If you want to solder jump rings closed, if you've put a jump ring through a piece of sea glass, that's incredibly tricky. I think I've had success with that about 4 or 5 times, and I just abandoned it because I was wasting so much glass, because the glass will take the heat because that's how it's formed. What it doesn't like is hot silver going through it. So that can be something else to think about, is longevity of your pieces, trying to solder things closed. Don't
Do all your soldering first. Stone setting is always the last.
think, oh, I forgot to put a bail on this pendant, I'll just add it on, because that will not work. That's when riveting comes in handy. You have to do it a different way. But yes, don't solder.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of your knowledge with us today about sea glass. And I hope you guys have enjoyed listening. Definitely go check out Kelly's course. It's a brilliant course. It's on offer at the moment, so it's a great price. until Wednesday, the 19th of March. I'll put the link in the show notes. And of course, if you can make it to Brighton, come and join Kelly and me for some jewelry making in person. We would love that too. And those of you thinking of doing the diploma in silver jewelry, there's still a little bit of time to sign up for this year's cohorts, where we will also be covering sea glass too. So lots to get on with. Kelly, if anyone hasn't heard of you before and would like to come and check you out online, where is the best place to come and connect with you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Willow and Twig, all one word, and Twig with 2 G's.
Awesome. Kelly's very active and amazing on Instagram, so we'll make sure we put the link to her Insta in the show notes as well. Go give her a follow if you're not already. All right. Well, thank you so much. Lovely to see all of you guys, and we'll be back for another episode up very soon. Bye for now.